Okay, the purpose of the LRS is to reduce frustration in animals. Um, the whole reason we came up with it back in the 1980s at SeaWorld, it was myself, Chuck Tompkins, Ted Turner, Dave Force, and Mike Scarpuzzi. Mike Scarpuzzi is the one that actually wrote it up after we had talked and experimented with this for over a year. So the purpose was to make sure that, to see if we could reduce the frustration in our animals in a no bridge event. In other words, when an animal made a mistake, didn't do the behavior correctly, refused the behavior or whatever, and they were not going to get a bridge, they didn't get bridged, they didn't get told that they did the behavior correctly, and therefore they come back and don't get reinforced after that. So that's why we developed it, was to reduce the frustration, which also, as we know, frustration can lead to aggression. So we did it to reduce the aggression in our killer whales. Okay, as far as the history of the LRS, we started experimenting with different ways of using it in the 80s, like I said, early 80s. We had first called it the least reinforcing stimulus. And we changed that later after we talked with and worked with Dr. Stan Kujai. While I was at SeaWorld, I hired Dr. Kujai to help us with our behavioral work. And one of the things we did was we showed it to him after we developed it. And he said, it's really not a stimulus, it is a scenario. So we changed it from least reinforcing stimulus to least reinforcing scenario. Okay, how does the LRS work? It's a very simple process. Let's say you have an animal, you ask it a behavior, the animal does the behavior incorrectly, doesn't do it to criteria, or it does the wrong behavior, or it takes too long to do the behavior, whatever the reason that you're not going to bridge or reinforce the animal for. When the animal is sitting in front of you, in other words, if it's a behavior away from you that takes place, you wait until the animal comes back and is in front of you. If the behavior animal's already in front of you, at that time, you pause for 3 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003. During that 3 seconds, you're observing your animal and seeing if the animal remains calm. If the animal remains calm and attentive, in other words, looking at you, ready to accept the next SD, the next behavior that you want to give the animal, and he remains calm, occasionally you're going to go ahead and reinforce that animal right there, right then, for remaining calm. Now I say occasionally because you're not going to reinforce every calm response. If you did that, you would never be able to train any behaviors. So just for sense of explaining it to you, in the beginning you will need to reinforce it more often, probably 1 out of 4, maybe even 1 out of 3 times until the animal understands. As the animal is remaining calm and coming back most of the time, after a non-bridgeable event and the animal's calm, then you can start raising that up to 1 out of 6, maybe even 1 out of 10 times that you would actually reinforce that behavior. So, let me back up. The animal does the behavior incorrectly. You don't give it a bridge. You don't reinforce it. It's sitting calmly in front of you for 3 seconds, 1001, 1002, 1003. You occasionally reinforce it. Like I said, in the beginning, you may have to reinforce it a few more times than you will after the animal understands that. All right? That is the LRS. That's all there is to it. It is not a timeout. It's a 3-second pause. Here's where people make the most mistakes with the LRS. They do the 3-second pause after a non-bridgeable event, and they never reinforce the calm response. If you do that, it's not going to work. The whole idea is to get your animal to understand that after a no bridge event, it's no big deal. I still have the possibility of being reinforced if I remain calm, and if I remain attentive, and if I'm ready to do the next behavior. It's as simple as that. People confuse it. We developed this behavior back in the 80s because we were having trouble with our killer whales at SeaWorld. Our killer whales, after no bridge events, were coming back to us upset. And when they were upset or frustrated, that can lead to aggression. And we were having some of our killer whales with some real aggression problems. Once we perfected this and started teaching our killer whales with this method, and we had to go very slowly with it, especially with our more aggressive animals, once we did that, we got rid of all of the aggression. We had animals that would aggress, once, twice, even 5, 6 times a day at us for no bridge events. Once we developed this and put it in place, and it took us a few months with some of these animals, but once we did that, we almost reduced aggression to 0 on our most aggressive animals. It works with all species. It is very helpful for any animals that are carnivores or that have naturally aggressive tendencies because they hunt for their food. It works great with elephants. We've used it in many facilities with elephants. We've used it a lot with dogs. It can work with aggressive dogs. So I highly recommend that you use this, but it has to be used correctly. Most places that we go to and that we work with, they've all heard of the LRS, they all say they're using it, but in reality, most of the places that we go to, what they're doing is just doing the 3-second pause and moving on to the next behavior. And if you do that, and you never reinforce that calm response, LRS is not going to work. In fact, it's not an LRS unless it is occasionally reinforced.